My name's Carrie. I'm an alcoholic. And man, my heart is just so, I feel like I've just been run through a tenderizer. My experience, strength, and hope. My first relationship with alcohol was a resentment. I grew up outside of bars. My grandmother was a bartender. My mom was a bartender. And I was one of those kids in the doorway. Can I get some money? Because I want to go next door. You know, I don't know if you guys have ever seen those kids, but that was me. Here, have some popcorn. Anyway. I honestly hated alcoholics as a kid. You know, I didn't understand why they were doing the things that they were doing, behaving the way that they were behaving. And, you know, like the cops were always coming, things were always happening. And it was always exciting. I guess I could say that. Fast forward, like my grandmother was 75 years old and Snohomish County SWAT was at her house. So, you know, when I say things were exciting, it lasted a really long time. I don't need that earring. When I was a kid, the first thing that I started to do was smoke cigarettes because at the age of 7, I really needed a cigarette. I mean, bad. And thank you. And my first drink by choice, although because alcohol was always around, you know, I was sampling here, sampling there. But the first time that I drank with intention, I got blackout drunk. I pissed my pants. I was 12 years old. I was hanging out with older kids because I was always willing to do more than the kids I was hanging that were my age. And I knew exactly why my family was willing to behave the way they were willing to behave and live the way they were willing to live. And I knew I was one of them from the very first night that I drank. And I did it as often as I could. And I was a really heavy blackout drinker from the time I was 12 until I was 16 years old, and a runaway, and a lot of things. We lived in Anchorage, Alaska. Half of my childhood was down here. And then my mom did a geographic, because everybody knows when you want to get sober, you move to Alaska. Oh my God. So I spent the second half of my youth into just before I was 21, I moved back to Seattle. But when I was 16 years old, I decided I wanted to see if I was an asshole without the alcohol. And so I stayed home on New Year's Eve and dropped a hit of acid because I was going to get sober. And 9 days later, I met a really violent man and started a relationship with him. I moved out of my parents' house. I never went back. I was 16 and on my own and getting a lot of mileage out of not being a drinker, being like the arm candy to the biggest drunk in Anchorage, you know, and violent and all that. And I never intended to not ever drink again, but that's what happened. And I didn't stop doing anything else. And I was smoking pot every day. And when my daughter, I got pregnant with my daughter when I was 17 years old by that man. He went to prison and got out on Christmas Eve, and my due date was exactly 9 months later. And, you know, that just wasn't a winning combination. Get out of jail, have a kid. When Danny was 2 years old, I purchased 2 one-way tickets on my lunch hour back to Seattle because I had to get away from these fucking people, you know. They were the problem. And I moved to Seattle and I recreated every player. Like you could almost like pluck them and set them down in the exact same chairs. I was hanging out in bars in Everett, and I do not have a clue how I didn't drink all those years. But I would sometimes go to AA to have my uncle's court slip signed. I'm just telling the truth. And I would say, yeah, I'm sober. I just smoke pot now. And people would be like, oh, and I didn't know. And when I was 24 years old, I was pregnant with my second child. His dad had just gotten out of prison. I hate talking about this. Oh my God. I don't look like somebody who had all that. I've done a lot of time in jail, I used to say, but it was all in the visiting room. Um, and I knew about Alcoholics Anonymous because when I was 16 years old and quit drinking, my best friend in Anchorage had been busted for something or other and court ordered to AA, and she didn't want to go by herself. But she said there were some cute guys there. And so I went to, and it was kind of a room like this, where off in another room they had like pool tables and all of that. And it was the kids of the people being sober that we were drawn to. There weren't there was no one else my age, but I got a big book and I loved hearing what they had to say. And you could smoke cigarettes and drink coffee. And I was like, man, you people really had it bad. I can see why you need to be here. And I thought I was so smart, because I just had the grace and that opportunity to not put alcohol into my system. But I kept my big book, and they gave you those little cards with the Serenity Prayer on it, and I carried it everywhere I went. When you move out of your parents' house at 16 and kind of bounce around, you lose everything. But to this day, I still have that big book and that little Serenity Prayer card. I don't have anything from high school. I don't have any yearbooks. I don't have shit, but I have those two things. And anyway, good God, that was a long time ago. That little girl is 33 years old right now and applying to become, this is so funny. She is going to be a Anchorage police officer. And yeah, and anyway, that's really funny because her dad is very familiar with the Anchorage Police Department. And there is so much irony. If God doesn't have a sense of humor, I mean, that's just total evidence. But so when I hit a bottom, I was going to a church in Ballard because I was so I had built a life that was just party and work, and no one was safe. I couldn't hang out with my family because they weren't safe. Everybody was using. I couldn't hang out with my friends because they weren't safe. Everybody was using. And so I went to this church and I sat in the front row because I didn't want anybody to look at me because I was really ashamed of myself. And I was convinced God hated me anyway. And they opened with the Serenity Prayer, and I thought I had died. And because those things didn't, like, good people go to church, and I'm sorry guys, but I thought bad people went to AA. I didn't think, I thought there were two camps, the good people and the not good people. And I knew I was a bad person, but it turned out that the pastor of that church was sober like 30 years, and I had no idea. I just went there because there was a sign in the window that said, all are welcome or whatever. And I met my first sponsor there, and she's here tonight. And talk about lifelines in Alcoholics Anonymous. I didn't trust anybody when I got here, and there was a good reason for that. I don't apologize for that. It was the way that it needed to be. And so I got sober after a little while of that negotiation thing Katie was talking about, and I got clean and sober. I was coming to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's funny today, but it was my reality at the time. I was writing down that I'd been sober since January 1st, 1988, but talking about still smoking, I wasn't even smart enough to hide it. And this woman said to me, she was a doctor, and she said to me one time after a meeting, why don't you change your birthday? And I was convinced she was jealous and didn't want me to have as much time as she had. And but something deep inside of me said, give yourself no, it wasn't deep inside of me. Somebody in a meeting said that. Give yourself the gift of being a newcomer, Carrie, and I did. And it was really hard to give up what I thought was 8 years and not take a drink, man, I got to tell you, that was like, I don't even get to drink and I have to change that date. And only drinking for 4 years and being a little kid alcoholic has really messed with my mind as my recovery has gone on. But I can tell you that anybody I ever drank with, including my mother, none of them have ever said, well, you weren't that bad. Or, I think you're taking this a little too far, Carrie, being sober. And nobody's ever said that to me. And one time I said to my friend, maybe I'm not an alcoholic, my sober AA friend. And she started laughing so hard, because it's not about how much we drank or how long we drank. It's what happens to us, not only when we drink, but when we stop drinking. I had no idea how to live life. Alcoholics Anonymous, I was 24 years old when I got clean and sober. And Alcoholics Anonymous has been the only structure I've ever had. And so I've done the whole thing where you see somebody sitting in felon row at a meeting, and then, you think, oh, AA boy meets AA girl. And I had a hell of a wedding. It was beautiful, I got to tell you. We were pregnant with twins at the time, because that's the order to do things. I don't know. And that marriage lasted only a couple of years. And yeah, that was, Alcoholics Anonymous has been there for me for the joys and celebrations. And also, when that person and I split, there was a lot of turmoil going on, we'll call it that. And I was left with, adios. I wasn't like, asking him to stay or nothing. But I had 4 children and not the means to pay rent. And he had my car repossessed because, hurt people. And Alcoholics Anonymous paid my rent anonymously when I was about to be evicted. And I'm still in that same home today. And that was like in 2003 or some crazy long time ago thing. And women showed up and they helped me. And lots of things have happened. I have friends in this program that I can tell the truth to, the kind of truth that saves your life, the kind of truth you don't want anyone to know. Where am I at? I was unemployable. This is kind of funny. I was unemployable and I got a job, and I told my second sponsor, I was going to quit. And I said, oh, God, I got the best story for her. She's totally going to co-sign this. And I said, my boss is critiquing my work. And I just don't, just like, I'm making all these mistakes. So, I just don't think it's a good fit. And I think I should just give my 2 weeks. And she said to me, they're not paying you for your opinion. And I think you should go back and make amends, because you haven't been doing your job, and blah, 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 blah. And I did all that. And it was the best experience I ever. I worked for that place for a year. The first 6 months were shit, and the second 6 months were incredible. And then pretty much the next job that I got, I've now had for 20 years. And I'm in a job where I get to help people and grow. I work in affordable housing, and it's quite a challenge. And this is a long time to talk, man. So there was a time, my favorite time in AA, a friend of mine had 3 kids, and I had to trump her, so I had 4. And then I met 2 more friends who are sitting here tonight, and they both have 4 kids. So when we'd go to childcare meetings, that's 12 children getting out of our car. And when Austri says the little ones grew up to take care of the older one, I mean, we would just like, I had a meeting at my house too. And so the whole upstairs of my place was just kids running around. My daughter hanging her siblings from their underwear by the door hanger. It's one of their favorite stories to tell. Remember when I was babysitting you at that meeting and I hung you by your underwear? And my children have grown up in Alcoholics Anonymous, not outside of a bar. They've grown up at Austree's house, and they've grown up at Carla's house, and they've grown up being loved and supported. And I have made a lot of mistakes that I'm not going to talk about. You'll just have to use your imagination. Except for this row over here, they know all about it. Most of them have had to do with relationships. Remember, felon, jail, pregnant, felon, jail, pregnant. Remember that? You can sober up a horse thief kind of a thing. Anyway, so I copped a resentment with Alcoholics Anonymous because of some stuff that had gone down. It was a series of things. I'm sure none of you all have ever resented Alcoholics Anonymous, have you? No. So I ran away from AA with a good buddy of mine. We went so far, we went to Al-Anon. And we found this group of women, and we met in someone's house every week and worked the steps from a different point of view. And I got into some outside help that has been very helpful, because one of the things I do want to touch on is there are a lot of opinions in Alcoholics Anonymous, and a couple of opinions almost killed me. I'm sober. I stayed sober through it, and I learned, my God turns even the worst things to good. Maybe not right away, but eventually. And I was instructed to make amends to people who had abused me. And I got some good shit out of that. I'm not going to say that I didn't, but it was also sort of plummeted me into some work that I needed to get some outside help for. And sometimes we guide people, sometimes we're just misguided in the program. I know people had good intentions. I know I want to stay sober no matter what. And that's why I was willing to go to those people and make amends. And God bless this idiot that I made amends to, my mom's second husband. He said, I give him this heartfelt amends, and he said, "That's all right, Carrie. That's just what little bitches do." And yeah, thank you for that. I sat silent for a moment, and here's the good thing that happened to me in getting a hold of this idiot. In that moment, I realized that all of that disgusting behavior was about him, and it wasn't about me, because who in their right mind would make a statement like that when somebody pours their heart out to you? Who would talk like that? Well, this guy. And I've never had to talk to him again, but I just want to say that, because sometimes people need outside help to figure out when it would do harm and not, and there's a lot of ways to make amends, So anyway, the highlight of my life has been working with others. There's nothing like being able to take your pain. Without you guys, all I have is a painful story, right? But in these rooms and working with other women, that pain gets transformed into the very touchstone that lets you know that I know, that you're not alone, that you never have to hurt again all by yourself. That ugliness is exactly the lock and key that is the magic of this program. And I made it back to Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's kind of a funny story, because it was, I never went very far away. I don't even have any friends but you guys, but I was kind of like having an attitude. Yeah, that AA, they tell you things that aren't, whatever. And, but I don't have any other way to live. Like, you guys are all I know. So I started coming back to Alcoholics Anonymous and getting somewhat active just before the pandemic. And man, God is so good to me, because during that time, I go to as many, when I first got sober, I wanted to be Miss AA. I almost was right behind Austria. I swear to God, I was working at the 12-step shop. I was sponsoring. We were going on conferences. We were doing all these things. Um, all this really cool, groovy shit was happening. I got way up on this pedestal, and the fall almost killed me. But I did survive it. And what the hell was I talking about? Oh, when I came back to Alcoholics Anonymous, I started going to as many meetings as I did when I first got sober. And I have to tell you guys something. It works again. Totally again. Oh my God. I did not want to have a sponsor because I've had really excellent sponsorship and then I've had some misguided sponsorship. And I just didn't know if I could. I already have people I trust. I don't need a thing, you know? And that's my wish. If I could just not ever need help ever again. But so after this shutdown, I got just kind of folded into all of these online meetings, and I have this new group of like women that I'm knee deep with in service positions and doing stuff and book studies. And sometimes I go, why am I doing this? This is so much. But I know why I'm doing it, because I can, you know. And what if we weren't here, you know? What if Katie came knocking on the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous and the people who love her the most weren't here? And I'm really grateful that I have not had to live that life and all those yets. And, you know, I have to admit it was kind of fun watching you party on Facebook. And I was thinking, fucking A, I'm not having that much fun living this sober life. I'm just being honest, you know. It's like, damn, that looks like fun. Like Norm, everybody, hey Norm, you know, when you come into meetings, it's kind of like that, but not quite. So it's good to hear the rest of the story. It's a gift to hear that. And people say you can't get sober for other people, and I'm just gonna tell you it's bullshit. I didn't have enough love or worth for myself when I got here. And P.S., some days that's still the truth, you know. But my children are incredible people, and I just want to brag about them for a second, because they're the reason why I got here, and you all are the reason why they are where they are today. The most painful experience I've ever had is being the mother of an alcoholic. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Watching this disease have its way with my oldest daughter was so painful. And she doesn't go to Alcoholics Anonymous, but she celebrated, God, it's such an Al-Anon win that I don't know the number, but like 10 years, I think, of not drinking. Maybe it's 11. I don't know. She quit when she was 21 and she'll be 32, 33 at the end of this month. So whatever that math is, I'm not good at it. And she has gone back to college. She's had a career at a law firm for just all these incredible things that I get to stand in awe for and not take credit for, you know, but Alcoholics Anonymous does. Because you take a kid who was raised outside of a bar and bring her in Alcoholics Anonymous and help her learn how to stay present to raise these kids. And then they turn in. My son did 7 years in the Navy, and now he's at Bothell UW. And my twins that were born while I was in Alcoholics Anonymous, my son just got off a fishing boat. Holy shit, save a seat. I love him, but he's figuring it out. And his twin sister is about to graduate from Western with she's majoring in archaeology with a minor in GIS. And I didn't know what that was. It's like mapping. Maybe some of you know what it is. Anyway, she's got an incredible future ahead of her. And the launching pad for my family has been here in Alcoholics Anonymous. I came in as a kid at 16, and then back at 24, I was still a kid. I was still stunted. I still had no tools. And you guys asked me to lay down my weapons and pick up some tools And it has been very hard at times to trust that I can live without those weapons, you know? Um, 5 minutes. I don't know. What do you say in 5 minutes? It's only been a few years since I haven't been having all these little ducklings, you know. I realized that I kind of hid behind my kids because when you're the mother of four, you don't even know you're hiding behind, you know. And then all of a sudden they're not there to do things for. Of course, they also want more from me than I ever thought they would at their ages. It's kind of a mixed bag, but I had no idea. Like, what do I do when I'm not doing that? And so I haven't quite figured it out yet, but one of the cool things I want to say, I got a couple of minutes. When I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I hated my mother. You know, she was in that bar. I was hungry. And she married that asshole who, that amends story, you know, he was around for a long time, too long. So there were reasons, you know, there were reasons. And I didn't know to separate the disease from my mother. But you guys helped me because you mothered me and you sistered me and you auntied me so that I had enough love inside of me. I came to you with a deficit, but you built me up until I could love my mom. My mom hasn't had a drink this month. It'll be 8 years. And she smokes pot like a chimney, I'm going to tell the truth. But I'm okay with that because as the daughter of an alcoholic, there's a difference. I don't know why I think there's a big difference. And my mom and I, we're solid, we're square. She had a brain bleed last summer and was, I didn't know, you know, what's going to happen. And I'm an only child. And my whole life while she was drinking and I wasn't, you know, till I was 11, I was afraid she was going to die. She was going to die. She was going to die. And so I had to confront that fear in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have to tell you guys that what I realized is that we're square. There's nothing between us that hasn't been said. She knows how much I love her. I have shown up. I have let her love me in the ways that she is capable of doing so. I bring my big shit to the women in this room. She doesn't quite have the tools, but we're best friends, you know. I hang out with her almost every weekend, and not out of obligation, but because I feel like God is giving me back something that most daughters of alcoholics never get to have, you know. They never get to have time with their mom like I've been able to do. And the healing, the generational, I come from ages and ages of alcoholics, you know, and you guys have helped me stand in the gap so that, you know, my sobriety does not cure my children of their disease, but what it does is it shows them that they don't have to live that way. You know, there is an alternate way to live. So I have 1 minute, 45 seconds left, and I don't have anything else to say except for that I hope for the rest of my life I stay here with you and give back what you have given me, because it's changed the whole trajectory of the generational trauma that we've experienced. So may God bless us and keep us always.